How's it going, everybody? Back in front of the whiteboard, testing for mold in the home is what I want to talk about briefly. And there are many, many different options. Right off the bat, I need to say I've done hundreds of inspections, and I know from doing the actual inspection, getting the test results, knowing the history of the home, all these other facets, that there are a lot of gaps in the results in testing, a lot of strengths and a lot of weaknesses for each testing type that is most common. Right off the bat, I'll say that the little plates, the little mold catching plates DIY, nearly impossible for me to interpret. I don't recommend them really hardly ever. So low cost, there's a lot of downsides to it. Look into it. Didn't want to include that into this list. I wanted to start with the ERMI or dust collection sample, which is what most people these days on Instagram especially and these other platforms are knowing about. So what is the ERMI? I have a lot of info on this. I have longer videos. Go look through all my page, but I'll say something briefly about it now. This is a do-it-yourself option that the EPA developed about 15 or so years ago, and this is a dust collection sample. So you get sent a Swiffer pad, and you collect dust from about 10 different surfaces throughout the home. You list what those surfaces were, and then you send off that innocent-looking dust to the lab, and they will tell you what is in your dust from a mold perspective. It will have the different species. There will be 36 different species that the ERMI will list, and it has, like I said, different strengths and weaknesses. Why I did this little funnel looking thing was because the ERMI is probably the most broad. You can't develop an entire remediation plan, or I like to say, don't make any big time life decisions based on one ERMI test. It's very broad, and it's a starting point just to see what's in your innocent looking dust throughout the home. And it needs to be, like every testing method, it needs to be paired with proper knowledge of the history of the home and the current state of the home and inspections throughout the home. So you can start to do this yourself with a bright flashlight, and we can talk about that part as well. But I did want to hone in on testing. This test is what you can determine is sitting in your home, and maybe what is adding to that overall concentration that is just in the home at a daily level. So for instance, if you have a really, really dirty HVAC system, or you're living on top of a really contaminated crawl space, that's a lot of surface area that's going to be influencing a lot of the surfaces of dust throughout the home, and that's what could cause a high ERMI. A very toxigenic mold source, or a few of them throughout the home, will add to that in the dust, and you can find that in the ERMI. The ERMI does have its downsides. I cannot interpret an ERMI all by itself. I need to have certain questions answered and certain context. I like to have pictures or video clips, and that's what I do in my one-on-one consultations to interpret the ERMI properly for you guys, and not just say, oh, it's good, oh, it's bad. That's really the best interpretation you can give if you don't have additional information around it. So context is very important on this. The vacuum cartridge type is how the EPA originally did it. So not going to get too technical here, but the averages that we have with the ERMI scores was determined by those 1,100 or so homes that was taken via vacuum cartridge in 2 spots in the home. That's how the test was administered. So now when we're going through EnviroBiomics to do dust collection throughout the home, there are, let's just say it's not apples to apples from the at-home option and the vacuum cartridge. So the ERMI really helps with cross-contamination measuring, just determining again what we're dealing with, which types we don't want to be showing up at a species level. Look at the rest of my content about that. But sometimes this is a good broad starting point as well. But don't just take an ERMI blind and don't search and skip searching around the house. The ERMI is a very important reading to match what you're doing with your inspection. Hope that makes sense. Air samples. Air samples have downsides and upsides as well. So the downsides of an air sample is that when you're collecting an air sample, it's in a little cassette, and you're basically taking a snapshot of air for about 5 to 10 minutes, however you're running that air sample. So you're only collecting that air for those 5 minutes at that time. You don't know yesterday's air, a month ago's air. The upside of an ERMI is those previous airflow circulation aspects fall and land in the dust, and that's where we're getting a little bit more of a long-term reading that's building up in the dust. With the air sample, it's a snapshot of what's in the air at that time. So if mold doesn't happen to be jumping up into the air, for your air sample when it's being taken, then you're going to have a much lower reading. That's why I like to do air samples in a little bit more contained zones, more localized areas, and I like to help give oversight for that. When I say there's a DIY option, that's on my link tree as well from a company called gotmold.com. This is a way that you can order air cassettes to do your own air samples. I think 2 to 3 or 4 at a time, however you want to order it. And I often help people with my oversight say, hey, yeah, this is probably the best place to set up your air sample, under that sink, next to that toilet, wherever it might be, where we're going to be looking to do a more localized reading. And there is a difference between the ambient air sample and the contained or cavity air samples. Air samples, like I said, are extremely variable based on the circulation and airflow that happens all day long in your home or building. So that's why air samples can be can do a lot of false negatives. But it's very important to pair air samples with ERMIs, and now you're getting more data, more information, and you can actually start to put some remediation plans in place. Air samples have a very wide variety of what molds they're finding, not the species level, but just the overall types of mold. And without getting too technical in this video, I'll explain it in another one if you care to know the difference between mold and then mold species, and then the mycotoxins and the mycotoxin producing species, and then the mycotoxin names themselves and how it funnels and changes names every time. So it can get confusing. You don't need to know all that. You just need to know that doing both together could be the most comprehensive way. But just know what you're doing and why you're doing it if you're going to choose air samples or ERMI or combine them. Finally, direct swab tests. So here I mentioned real quick, EnviroBiomics, you can get it from Assured Biolabs, other ERMI options, Mycometrics, I believe. Air samples you can get from your inspector, or the one DIY option I know right now is from gotmold.com. And then finally, direct swab tests. The best DIY option for this is from Assured Biolabs. Assured Bio is not on my link tree because there's no way yet for me to partner with them that I know of, but they have very good options for, hey, we have discoloration right here, or we want to know exactly what's on our AC coil, and we want to take a direct swab sample, for instance. When you see a mold colony forming or a questionable substance, that's when you want to do a direct swab test. These have the least room for error because it's very presence versus absence type of test. If you have something you're in question of, you just put a swab on it, send it to the lab, and they will do the reading and send you the result. There's less variations that the air samples and ERMIs might have in their testing. So just, again, don't make too many huge decisions in life, or don't put too much stress on any one test showing up high in a certain way. It needs to be paired with things. Now, the upside of a swab sample, like I said, is it's going to tell you the type, amount, condition on that swab where you collected it. If there's an entire wall full of mold and you take a swab of one spot, yes, your swab is going to show so much less than the whole, but it's going to tell you the type and amount on that swab, the condition it's in, growing or not. If it's a very small area, again, you're trying to identify that. So this is also very helpful as a renter, or when you're trying to use this as proof to build a case. It's either mold or not, and the direct swab sample will show you that. Oftentimes people, doing air samples or ERMIs will try to use that to build a case, and it can help, but there's a lot of nuance with that I can explain more in person or one-on-one consult if you'd like. But these are very, very good, cheaper option, good bang for your buck. So how do we make sense of all of these? Like I said, it's best when paired with an inspection. I've told some people, don't even bother testing yet until you know certain things about the home. When people are in a home search, for instance, they want to know, what's in the home, or should I just collect the dust of the previous owners, and whatever the ERMI says, I'll make my next big life decision based on that. I say, you can take that ERMI, that's fine, but please pair it with a proper inspection. A bright flashlight and a low-cost moisture meter can get you very, very far. You can go around the home, and again, I teach this often on how to do some of your own inspections as well. If you're going to have an inspector come in or remediator, be the best homeowner or tenant you can be, and do your homework and have a list prior of these different spots in the house that you want tested, that you already know have or did have water damage. So you want to be best prepared. My analogy here is, don't just give over your keys to the mechanic and say, yeah, do whatever you want. You're going to have a much higher bill, and you didn't even know if it was needed or not, right? So do your own homework on your own home to identify those areas, and then do these different testing options. Like I said, the ERMI is going to be the most broad. The air sample can get a little bit more localized and dialed in, and then the direct swab sample will really pinpoint the types and amounts there. And with interpretations, that's a video in itself. How people interpret these results are all different and all variable. With me, that's why I like to have pictures. I like to have history of the home, current state of the home, symptoms people are experiencing, and a lot of other aspects that I like to make the home one big puzzle that I'm putting together through all these different data points. And that's how I best interpret it. I do interpret it based on the types and amounts. So if there are the most toxigenic mold types showing up and longer term water damage and at very high levels, then yes, that's a very easy interpretation to make. But even the ones in the medium to low, we still need to make some steps to either remediate or clean and lower those concentrations for your best health and best air quality in your home. I could go on and on. There are so many nuances and different situations that we can talk about. And that's where, if you have specific questions, go on my link tree and in my bio and book one-on-one with me. I would love to help. These are very, very high value options that can save you a ton of money in the long term, because I will walk with you through this and get a really good game plan that's going to give you the most return on your investment for your next steps. I don't want you going 6 figures in the hole if you don't need to. Some people do. It just depends, again, on what type of home you're living in and the different situations at hand. But this is where hopefully I can be a good resource for you in the exploratory stage, the testing stage. Maybe you already have testing, need interpretation. Maybe you're in the middle of remediation, you want some guided oversight. Maybe you're done with remediation and you want to make sure you did everything well, and now you're set up to maintain your home and maintain the cleanliness there. Again, no matter where you are in the process, I would love to help. All of these have great testing options online, which are in my link tree. I have an ERMI link. Unfortunately, no discount code. I couldn't make that happen after I tried many times. So it's just going to be the link directly on EnviroBiomics, and I'll link that. The air samples, like I said, is going to be from your professional inspector who's going to be coming and doing these air samples, or gotmold.com has a DIY option that is also in my link tree. That one does have a discount code, so that's good. And then direct swab test, that would be off of Assured Biolabs, and they are a fantastic lab that if you have questions, call them. They will explain some things to you as well. These are the basic 3 that you guys need to know about. Oh, final thing, and I did miss this, the mycotoxin test from Real Time Labs. That's another good option. We're not going to go into all the details of that, but that is something else that you could order or have your inspector do if they are literate in that. And so I hope this helps. I know testing can be a very confusing or just complex type of topic to be discussed here. So I hope this brought some clarity, and I will see you soon.